Welcome back. Today we're talking about the concept of return. It's not one of those super flashy, exciting things about game dev, but it's very, very useful. So here I have my little guy. He can go back and forth. He can jump, and there's gravity, and he can land on these ground tiles. And a lot of that is handled by this move code, which tests if our left or right button is being pressed and gives him a direction. We apply gravity, but only if he's not touching the ground. But we're also asking if the player collides with something. And in this collide function, we have these lines right here, return true and return false. But what does return mean? Well, return is a way to kind of turn this function into a variable when you call it. So you're not just executing some code, but you're executing some code, and then wherever you called this function from, it kind of turns it into whatever the result of this code is. So this collide function, this is getting the flag of the sprite that is under our player. And if that flag is 0, then it's setting this local variable A to true. And if that's true for one corner of our guy, local A will be set to true. Same with local B, C, and D for all 4 corners of our sprite. Then we test if any of these are true. So if A is true, B is true, C is true, or D is true. If any of these are true, we're going to return true for the whole function. If none of them are true, then we'll return false. Return basically takes whatever value we put after return, and it replaces this function call up here. Another thing to note is that it ends the function as well. So if we have return and PICO-8 reads return, it won't read the rest of the function. So it stops right there. So what's happening is we're kind of using this to test something. So if collide player, then we do something. So it says if collide, okay, what is this? Is this true or false? It goes through here and it's either going to return true or false. So if it's true, then it's going to do something. If it's false, then it's not. So this is a great way to kind of combine a bunch of code together in a test, or to get a value from a whole block of code without necessarily assigning a variable to it. You can just get a new value each time. So for instance, this local A here where I'm getting this flag and everything, I can just take this, I'll hit X, and we'll just say get A, make a new function for that. And then I'll come down here and just make a new function get A, boom. And we can just return the value of that, return true or false. And I could just pass in this same object like this, get A, and everything works the same way because we're still doing that same test, but we're doing it inside of a function instead of just this. Now, this isn't very efficient. We probably wouldn't actually do this. You'd probably do this with something that will take several lines of code because, you know, it's actually a little more work than just to type in what we want. One thing we could do, though, actually, is we could take these values and put them into arguments like this. Take this and replace it with X, and we'll just ask for an X and a Y argument here. And then we can pass the arguments in here. And maybe we could call this, you know, test flag or something like that. And we could actually reuse this same function call and just put in different arguments here for each of these local things. So save, run, and it works the same way. So instead of all this, we could say test flag. Like it's really not, like this example isn't really more efficient, right? But for a bigger function, you know, where you have multiple lines or something like that, you can kind of reuse this same function and just pass in a couple values that you need instead of writing this whole thing out each time for every test. And this is actually a little more readable. So even this, I mean, it's a little bit cleaner, even though it's maybe not super practical. We could even shorten the name of the function, you know, maybe TF for test flag, call this TF. And so now we're kind of getting rid of, you know, fget, mget, this divided by 8 and divided by 8 and 0. So it's, you know, 1, 2, we're getting rid of, you know, 3 tokens here, 2 tokens here, 4 tokens there. So that's 7 tokens per line times, you know, 3. So, I mean, that saves us 21 tokens doing it this way, even though this isn't super practical. And so doing this on something where it's a longer function. So yeah, return is pretty cool. All it does is it returns a specific value from a function. So when you call the function like TF, this is going to return true or false because we're returning this fget, mget testing for flag 0, which is going to be true or false. So this is going to be true if we're over something that we shouldn't be over. And so this will be true, which means A will be true. And if A is true, then we're going to return true for our collide. That means that our player is colliding with something. Then we're going to do this line of code. So yeah, it took me a while to kind of realize what return was, but very, very useful. Hope this helps you. If it did, let me know by hitting that like button. And hey, thanks for watching. You're the best.